my dear friends, rolling into another week, and look at that. He went to start 1 minute early, and the time rolled over to the hour exactly as he started. So that's the trick. Just have to start early in order to be on time. There's a lesson in there for life, too, I suppose. I hope you're having a great Monday, a great start to your week. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend, maybe full of gaming, maybe full of thinking about gaming. Let me know what you got up to. I'll certainly do the same. But for the moment, welcome back to Tales of Praxis. It's so nice to see you again. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, Aaron Terrible Fate, Mr. Terrible Fate Man, depending on whom you ask and what mood our dear friend Grail is in. Hey, Grail, good to see you again. The founder of withtheterriblefate.com, your online publication resource for all literary studies and celebrations of video games as a storytelling medium in every form factor, from long-form articles to podcasts to convention lectures, to these streamed live book club adventures that we are going on together, wrapping up probably almost certainly this week, I feel. Tales of Grace's F after over 90 hours, if you can believe that. I certainly can, but it's been a great, luxuriously long playthrough for working through some really rewarding and special themes. Hey, Pottery, great to see you do. How you doing, my friend? I know. I think we were definitely on the same page after the stream navigation on Friday, Grail. But like I said, stay tuned. I got a fun story about that too. If you're a newcomer to what we do here on the Tales of Praxis adventures specifically, unlike Grail and Pottery, Tales of Praxis is an analytical series that I started about a year ago for With the Terrible Fate, focused just on Bandai Namco's Tales or Tales of JRPGs. They're a series that meant a lot to me growing up, informed how I think about gaming and philosophy and, frankly, myself and the world. And so I decided it was long past time to give them a deep analytical study to try to figure out what the series as a whole is concerned with, what themes it wants its players to meditate on, reflect on, reconsider in their own lives, and the language it has established over almost 30 years for manufacturing opportunities and journeys for us to engage with these themes and discover how they might pertain to our lives beyond the games as well. So we've been doing that in two forms for the past year. One has been these live book club adventures, whether you're a Tales diehard fan with deep knowledge of the series or someone who just loves the storytelling of video games. You're welcome here. We treat these as live studies, adventuring through one Tales game after another and working through whatever literary content comes up between the playthrough and thoughts on other Tales games and thoughts on other games more broadly. I'm a fan of calling the chat, including myself, the real life JRPG party, because truly working through and thinking about these games feels like a JRPG adventure unto itself. So if you've been lurking or if you found the YouTube videos and you're interested in these kinds of studies of video games, encourage you to jump on the Twitch chat, join it live. Like I said, I think we're going to be wrapping up our most recent adventure very soon, so it's a great time to jump in on a brand new one, which will be Tales of Exilia, followed by the sequel. So I'm sure that'll keep us busy for a good while with some good content on plenty of rewarding things to think with two Tales games that I have never completed to date. The other half of the series, of course, is long-form analytical studies, where I put on my philosopher of games hat and study the textual content of these games, not just in terms of the text of what's said in terms of words, but more broadly in terms of the textual object that is the game as a whole, its mechanics, its characters, its narrative point of view, its player interactions, everything in between, and ask the question, what themes is it concerned with? What can we glean from trying to solve particular puzzles in the narrative, look more closely at particular characters, everything in between. And if you want a better sense of what that looks like, you're welcome to check out the articles, all of which are on withtheterriblefate.com. But it's also good timing for that because I am at this point tentatively willing to commit, but am going to commit to tomorrow. You can expect the next article on that side of the Tales of Praxis series and my first publication of 2024, which is going back to the beginning of the Tales series to look at Tales of Fantasia. So it's very much a New Year start something new at the beginning vibe, something that feels very Tales and very nice for a January study. So it's not as long as what I published most recently on Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Destiny, but it is substantive. Like I was talking about last week, it's a fun case of taking a long, unflinching look at a particular character and then using that character to understand the whole suite of Acelia games, Fantasia and Symphonia and Dawn of the New World, to which we in the West have access in the form of official localizations. So it's taken a little longer than I expected, but in a great way. If you also love Tales of Symphonia and Dawn of the New World, there's a lot of new analysis of both of those in there, which I wasn't fully expecting going into it. And I think without teasing it more too much, because I'm excited just to share it and hopefully talk about it on the stream over the next couple streams and think through what people feel about it and how it sheds light on other aspects of the Tales series. The one last thing that I will tease, which was fun to work through this weekend, was if you happen to be a die-hard, long-haul Praxis gamer who watched the Dawn of the New World streams, you'll know that one thing I was really taken with that drew me into Dawn of the New World in a way that I don't think I experienced the first time when I played it, back when it first came out, was just the side quests, how long they are, how missable they are, and how much light they shed on other aspects of the game, to the point that I really felt, in part, it might be the case that I looked unfavorably on the game the first time simply because I missed the side quests, and that totally changed my experience of it. And you'll see once this is published, but actually, I didn't expect it, but using this character study of a particular character in Tales of Fantasia helped me to make sense of the way in which I think those side quests in Dawn of the New World are really special, unusual in the series, and contribute to the core themes that Dawn of the New World is concerned with in a really rewarding and illuminating way. So that's my last little tease. It's looking like it'll be about 12,000 words. I'm going to be in the editing workshop tonight, making sure that it is presentable for all of you fine gamers and thinkers. I'm excited to talk about it with you, workshop it, think about it, everything in between, and then it's on to the next one, on to the next study as it goes. All right, so it was church time for you this weekend. And okay, so Church of God and Church of Coldstone, two very different churches, but something religious about both of them, perhaps, Grail. And another new fighting game release. Okay, well, you're consistent, if nothing else. I forget, Grail, with all of your more off the beaten path fighting games, are you also a Tekken head? Are you hyped out of your mind about the Tekken 8 release? I couldn't remember. I know you talked a little bit back when the collector's edition was announced at its obscene price point, but I'm not sure if that's something you'll be playing now in this first week after launch day as well. As we're rolling through the Tales of Praxis stuff, I think that's my big update. It's been so nice to get back to analyzing and writing about games. I was also writing about games for putting together my writing sample for graduate school programs and PhD programs in philosophy. It's a very different kind of writing, as you might expect, than the kind of literary studies and applied philosophical analyses of games that I've been doing for many years at this point on With a Terrible Fate. And there's something just so nice about being able to get in the weeds and work through the substance of these works of art in a way that is meaningful and additive to the conversation amongst the gamers and fans who love these works so much. And I think I've talked before about how I think the Tales series is especially conducive to that special kind of fan who just positively loves the games and loves talking about them with people who see them differently so that they can get more out of the games and come to understand the other fans in new ways. Everything, in effect, that the substance of these Tales games teach us to value in our relationships and the way in which we inhabit the world. So it's a special thing to be able to publish and think about games more broadly, but especially in terms of this Tales adventure, there's a reason I've been loving it so much for this amount of time. Gonna buy Tekken, went for something cheaper. I think that is totally fair. And the good thing about the economy, well, good, but especially with games these days, is wait a couple seconds and I'm sure it'll go on a steep sale. So I can't imagine you'll have to wait that long. That was my weekend, was to use Grail's phrase, no lifing it, and really working through this article. Although, like I mentioned, I did have the chance to go out with another friend who had recently been to Japan, so it was nice to eat some pretty good for the States Japanese food and reminisce about Japan adventures. And that's my segue to reminding everyone that I'm still processing the 2 week or so trip that I took with my friend and colleague Dan Hughes to Japan. Our plan is to record a podcast, among other things, reminiscing about that after the stream today, in fact. So if you want more stories, you want more reflection, insights into the connective tissue between Japanese culture and these games that we love so much, look forward to that coming down the pipeline as well. And I think the last thing by way of easing into Tales of Grace's F is a little bit more show and tell. We're getting down to sort of the dregs and the smaller things that I brought back, but things that I brought back that still set a nice scene and, like I alluded to, also pertain to the Tales of Grace's stream today specifically in a way that you might not expect. So it's still worth doing the show and tell for the moment. I knew you had to, Pottery, but this time I learned from last time because I felt bad about preempting you, so I was going to let you ask the question. There was sadly no inscription this weekend because I was slaving away at this thing that I'm excited to share with you and talk with you about. So still serving you at the end of the day. But you better believe that once this is published or even publication ready, my plan is to reward myself by easing into the couch and easing out of my mind with some more work on Inscription. So I got a good feel, and we'll be able to chat about that as well before the week is out. That's the best promise I can make there. Inscription and Tales of Hearts, two very different vibes. I think maybe at least superficially very different vibes, which feed very different parts of my soul and gaming appetite. So excited to get back to both of those. I feel, yeah, it's interesting to evaluate how mainstream or obscure is your interest in gaming, because I feel like I at least don't oftentimes have a good beat on that myself, and I wonder whether that's a more general thing or a more Aaron thing. But yeah, because I feel like a lot of people dive deeper into the indie circuit than I do, and a lot of the games that I love to study and analyze and think about are by and large AAA, but it's not a hard and fast rule either. I write about indie things sometimes. One of my favorite early reflections that I did was on The Beginner's Guide, and if you haven't played that, go and play that. But yeah, it's an interesting way of dovetailing really with well, it's not quite the same question, what it was that Pottery and I were talking about last week in terms of the distinction between critical review of a game and popular review of a game, or a film for that matter, because we were talking about it in terms of Apocalypse Now. You know, what makes the difference between something being broadly recognized and worth studying and more niche or obscure and worth studying. Let's do some more show and tell so that we can dive into Tales of Grace's F. I don't know if we'll be able to complete it tonight, but I think we have a shot at working through it at least. Anime BS. All right, I don't even know how to unpack that, so let's be careful with spoilers for poor Aaron, who wants to have his virgin brain broken by the game that he doesn't know what's going on in yet. If you haven't already clocked the last of Aaron's shirt acquisitions from Japan, Ludwig the Holy Blade with his guiding moonlight, a nice both aesthetic and cathartic boss for Aaron to have on his shirt, because it was one of the ones that drove me absolutely mental in Bloodborne: The Old Hunters, which, Pottery, I know you haven't had that struggle firsthand, but given that you've watched it, I'm sure you can relate to that. My little story about that boss, which I love, is like many of Miyazaki's bosses, he has two forms, and the Moonlight Blade only comes out in the second form. And so one of my core memories of high school gaming was that right when The Old Hunters came out, I partied up in real life, like a LAN party, with a couple buddies of mine to play through the DLC together at a friend's house. And we must have spent, I think, at least 90 minutes working through just the first phase of Ludwig, which is nuts if you haven't played it. He's a giant horse monstrosity that is just a bunch of flailing limbs and very hard to predict and manage. And we finally got past it, and we thought we were done. And then, of course, because it's Miyazaki, we weren't done. And he stood up and pulled out his sword. And then, in a twist of also classical Miyazaki-ness, because we were playing it when it first came out, there was this hilarious glitch where, I kid you not, he stood up on his hind legs, he pulled out his sword to start his second form, and then he promptly exploded and died. And if you're not a big Miyazaki fan, He's known for punishingly hard works, and that's true. But also, every now and then, once in a blue moon, you'll encounter this hilarious kind of glitch that almost feels more comically absurdist by virtue of the milieu and the aesthetic and pain in which it's embedded. So he's a core moment in my gaming memory of suffering, but also laughing and having a cathartic release. So all the better for wearing him on a shirt. That's the shirt. A couple of little tidbits. So one of the things that I think I mentioned that was really cool was we found this official Square Enix cafe, which is a really high quality, delicious cafe that they will also theme for their different game releases. So you better believe it's turning over on Leap Day this year for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But when we were there at the beginning and end of our trip, because we started and ended in Tokyo, it was themed around Dragon Quest and then Octopath Traveler 2. I didn't realize it, but I guess one of the many gacha collectibles in Japan is beautiful collectible coasters. So we got these randomly assorted coasters with our themed drinks when we went there, one of which was for Dragon Quest monsters with those little fine folk, and one which was themed around particular characters from Octopath. Neither of which I've played, but Dan has a lot of love, especially for Octopath, so it was a nice tie-in to his bachelor party-ness of it all. The other thing, which it wasn't on my list to share, but I figured it would be fun, was if you don't know the origin of Pokemon, originally called Pocket Monsters in Japan, they originated in these little capsule gacha machines that if you go to Japan, there are basically two kinds of vending machines everywhere. One is for getting drinks like coffee or water or what have you, and the other are vending machines for randomly assorted themed capsules with truly any kind of stuff in it. And so if you look at, this is literally one of the capsules and kind of the model of a Pokeball, and that whole conceit came from that. Yeah, that's what Dan was saying too, Grail. I guess his first entree into the Dragon Quest series was actually through Monsters, and he loved it. I didn't even know that was a branch of the series, so I'm gonna have to check it out. There. So yes, and they have become popular at cons too, Grail. So I'm glad you feel the agony of losing money to it, because that's part of the experience. But so it was fun because traveling around Japan, it was nice to kind of get to know the culture of the places based on what was available in the gacha machines. And I'll show you some of the crazy diversity I'm talking about in terms of the different things that were available. So here's an easy one to start with. If you're a JoJo fan, this is the stand of Kishibe Rohan, the character that's kind of an insert for the creator of the series, Araki. This is Heaven's Door. So your typical kind of anime fare for one thing. But then you have other things like we went to this cafe in Shibuya, which was truly just like the equivalent of a Denny's, right? But it had this little cat mascot. And so at the front of the cafe, you could use this little gacha machine to get little stamp icons of the cat, which I thought was simply too cute, not least of which because talk about technology. The restaurant was set up in a way where you would place your order and then a robot with this cat face, when your order was ready, would bring it out to your table like an automated Roomba or something, and you would just take your tray off of the robot. So that was so charming and hilariously Japan that I needed to get this in order to remember that. We also got, in a similar cafe theme, three-dimensional latte art, because I am such a wonderful coffee nerd with a little, I think it's supposed to be a bear on top popping out. So I'm going to need to find different places to house all of these things. Of course, some Pokemon ones. So I like to say, when it comes to Eevee related things, I'm like the Pharaoh Atem from Yu-Gi-Oh, where I can always draw the thing that I want. So I found a gacha machine with a bunch of different Pokemon in it. But of course, I pulled the one Eevee from it, a little keychain, I think, or similar, a charm. This wonderful, I don't know if I can do this on my hand, but I wanted to try for you guys a little Magikarp that will flop around as Magikarp does, which might be my favorite thing that I found in any of the gacha machines. I saw it more than once, and the second time I simply had to get it. But then you also get sort of more religious and historically inspired iconography. So, for instance, when we were hiking a mountain, I want to say outside of Kamakura, at sort of the base camp for that, there was a vending machine with a bunch of different family crests that relate to the Tokugawa clan, which unified Japan after the Warring States period. So I pulled one of these crests representing, I think, one of the offshoots of the Tokugawa family from that. This fella, Ungyo, I mean, talk about things that you can pull from gotcha machines. So this is a Buddhist figure, one half of, I'm going to have to look up the name to remember it, Agyo and Ungyo, who are these different emanations of a Buddhist bodhisattva, basically representing in Buddhism the equivalent of the Alpha and the Omega, creation and destruction. And the two sounds that they make with their mouths, Agyo makes an ah sound with an open mouth, and Ungyo makes an sound closing his mouth. So together they form the aum of meditating on the creation and end of things. So it was very funny because when we were in Japan, Dan and I, in our group chat with each other, we gave each other the nicknames of Agyo and Ungyo, and Dan was Ungyo. So to have that kind of overlay of our adventure and then pull that amazing looking creature from a gotcha machine of all things was very fun. And then other little more religious cultural objects like this adorable little praying squirrel statue, and even more fittingly for Aaron, of course, the little corgi in prayer. How about that? Oh man, we're getting raided. We are famous, Grail. Look at that. The times they are changing. We are playing Tales of Graces, but we do this wonderful thing where it's embedded within the broader context of this analytical series we're doing, studying and evaluating all of the Tales games as a whole. And because this particular philosopher of video game storytelling just went on a very game-centric adventure to Japan, we're getting some tales from the front, so to speak, before we're easing into it. So that's the context there. Went to the Nintendo store, of course, found some amazing keychains that I had never seen anywhere else to pay homage to my work on the Zelda series. So some good old-fashioned Lon milk in keychain form. Didn't even know that was a thing. Of course, any excuse to find another rendition of Majora's Mask in pin form, because I am who I am, and I really owe so much of my work on video game analysis to Majora's Mask. The key to end all keychains, the boss key, iconic from basically any Zelda game at this point, and that wonderful heart container for when you need a one-up from bosses. Yeah, it's literary study and more holistic, Hoshi. So podcast is not one I've heard before. I've heard Teacher's Lounge Hangout when we have co-hosts on here occasionally, but welcome to it and excited to have you be a part of it. No, I'm not going to restart at this point, Grail, not for the sake of the OG fans, so don't worry about that. And then the last thing that I wanted to share on this particular adventure and warm-up, and Grail, this dovetails in with what I was saying to you when we were getting started, was I wasn't even sure whether I was going to bring these up and mention them, but then I was thinking about the challenge that we had on Friday in terms of navigating this dungeon that we're working through now, and I said, you know, one thing that I picked up in the secondhand bookstore and media store that I've been chatting about for the last few streams was a collection of something that, again, I guess I imagined existed, but I'd never really thought about it. The official guides to these to a range of the Tales games. So I realized, oh, you know, I actually picked up the official guide to Tales of Graces F. And by the way, again, how about amazing cover artwork there? And a further cool thing about this text is that it even has a different artwork, one that's more familiar to us, on the inside cover. So we actually have the opportunity to work through the dungeon with the official guide, Grail. And hilariously, even though it's in Japanese, the actual graphics of the maps are clear enough. So we'll be able to use that as we work through things this evening. Well, pottery, that's why I'm happy to have the excuse to use them now for something, because I don't want to say this was the one purchase I regretted, because I don't regret it, and I'll show you some of the others. They're very cool and beautiful, but I had underestimated how much they would weigh in my suitcase compared with so many of the other things that I collected over the course of the trip. So, oh boy, let me tell you, lugging around one, two, three, four, five, six, like seven thick books as I was wandering throughout Japan, that was not something I had on my bingo card for my time over there. But it was worth it. No, they're not light. They're the opposite of that. I'd forgotten that since I'd gotten used to playing games, many of which now aren't even physical at all, rather than reading books. But here, that's the lesson about games. You can treat them as literature, and you can read actual literature about them. I don't need to walk us through all of them, but I wanted to share some of them with you just because, again, the artwork was in some cases breathtaking to me, in some cases just fun and charming. Like, look at this slightly chibi rendition of the gang from Tales of the Abyss, a representation of them I'd never seen before, and what a fun cover for a guide to one of my favorite games of all time, as you all know. Beautiful artwork too for another game near and dear to my heart, Tales of Destiny, and how cool to see something so aesthetically robust for one of the first and relatively low quality graphical entries in the series too, right? Yeah, and that, as much as anything, pottery is one of the reasons that I picked them up. So I haven't leafed through them all in depth yet, but not disappointed by the covers. Again, in that spirit, Tales of Rebirth, one of the ones that has not made it out of Japan, but oh my goodness, look at that cover art. You know you want it to, and I'm not giving up hope. I think it is actually Grail. Yeah, because I looked inside. Yeah, it is. It's a guide for the director's cut as opposed to the original. But all the same, just in the same way that the director's cut was able to update the graphics, so too nice to have a concept art representation that's better than what we got the first time. This one was interesting because I'm not sure how it differs from a guide, and it'll be fun to look into once we've played this together because, like I said, I haven't played it and I don't want to spoil myself. But there was a guide of the same kind of the ones I just showed you for Tales of Exilia 2. And then there was also this official scenario book with some cool, more sketchy artwork on the front. So just for the difference as much as anything, I wanted to pick that up too. So a stack of books, and as Pottery said, likewise, I am running out of book space. So I'm glad at least that we have an opportunity to use the Tales of Grace's F guide this evening together. I'm excited about that. I know, Grail. I feel like you've been saying that every time I've brought it up. So, but I mean, I'm the last person to be judgmental of something like that because I think everyone on this real live JRPG adventure together knows that when you set your mind to a big project, it ends up taking at least 1.5 to 2 times as long as you expect it to. And my work is certainly no exception to that rule. So it's nice to know that there are thoughtful and passionate fans working on and thinking about that, right? Just speaking further in favor of the wide diversity of people who are interested in these masterpieces in a wide variety of ways, right? So it's all connected. It's all Tales of Praxis at the end of the day, isn't it just? See, so Grail, you know, well, you can bring that up again once we're in it, so that then we can understand it together. But yes, no spoilers, and you know I appreciate that. Well, and like I said, editing pass is what I'll be doing tonight, so I feel that deeply. Couldn't forget to show you this. Tried to get a little keychain of a dog in honor of Evie. I got the funniest one in the gacha machine. Little dog butt. So, say what you will about that, but I think there's something very essentially Evie about that. I won't say that too loud because she might judge me and get offended and start barking in the background. I think that's what I've got for you, my dear friends. Yeah, like I said, I hope that you enjoyed your weekend. Grail, I hope that you enjoyed the ice cream, at the very least, and the fighting game. And I'm so excited to get back into the paces of talking about some of my written work and more involved analysis with you, hopefully starting on Wednesday. So look forward to that. We'll see where we are in Tales of Grace's F in terms of, maybe we can have a nice stream of working through post-game or the end of the F arc and trading off between that and talking about Fantasia, thinking about the Azalea games, thinking about what's going to come next. So a nice liminal transitional period in this JRPG length adventure. Or adventuring together, journeying together. There you go. That's a better way of saying that. All right. Welcome back to Tales of Praxis, my dear friends. And my video capture card, surprise, surprise, is not doing what it wants to. So give me 1 sec here. Fix this. There we go. Easy enough to fix. I just don't know why I can't get it to stick in OBS. All right, so I did us the favor of moving back to, should we call this square base camp? I'm going to call it base camp at this point. And like I said, I have truly just they make it very easy in terms of the list of steps and motions to go through to make it to the end of the dungeon. So God bless official guides for that. As I think it was you, Pottery, said, guides can vary so much in terms of quality, but I think especially when a company like Bamco puts in the effort to make an official guide, I feel like that usually works out well, or at least it's working out well in this case, so let's knock on wood and take advantage of that. So there are some early steps that basically just take us around to the items, which I think we've fished out at this point, so I'm going to head in the direction that I think is the next actual way to progress, and we'll see how things go and move forward from there. Yeah, that is a lot of fun, Pottery. Well, and I think I called that out about the instruction booklet for Majora's Mask also, the idea that it just, like, it didn't tell you where to go for all the side quests, but said, hey, discovering these things that don't have anything to do with the main story is part of what makes this game especially fun, so we hope you take the time to do that. There is something so charming and encouraging about that. Well, yeah, and the guide especially, as long as they, like, I'm okay if they tell you that, as long as they have a cheat sheet or something in the back where, like, after you look around, they'll tell you where it actually is. Yeah, it's quite comprehensive, Grail. It tells you where everything is. It might be harder for me to tell where all of the chests are, just because that's a little more embedded in the Japanese, but I'm going to do my best. It truly just gives you, like, a step-by-step, here's where to go in this order to do everything in the dungeon, so I'm going to follow that and hope that we don't miss anything along the way.
Captain? You're not doing so bad there yourself, Asbel.
I mean, you already did it once, Pottery, last week, so I don't know if that makes it better or worse or the same for you to do it again. It would certainly make you consistent, at least. And now we can tell that Evie did, in fact, hear what I was saying about her, because she feels I've besmirched her name and she's going to bark angrily in the background. Oh, don't say I haven't gotten the cool ones, Grail. I mean, I got Reed's Carta, at least, and the Tales of Destiny gauntlets, so I'm a pretty happy camper at this point. I love that too, Grail, just looking back at your message about that fighting game. And I've said this before, it's one of the things I love just listening to you talk about the fighting games that you're playing, because yes, it's so cool when a team has put that much work into the sophistication of their system and characters that such a little tweak would make such a big difference. And it's also so cool, and I want to say a testament to you, that as someone so deep into fighting games, you can recognize that and talk about it with a level of mastery to be able to explain why such a minute change would make a big difference to their system. Like that says a lot about your mode of engagement with those games, I think. A lot of good things. Oh man, Gotta admit, I have mixed feelings about that raid because on the one hand, I'm happy to be able to show other people who drop in from Twitch what it is that we're really about, because I've said this before many times, and to Grail's point, I won't restart my spiel, but one of the reasons I continued with the Terrible Fate for so long is I really do believe we have a different and valuable perspective and ethos about reading games than a lot of other outlets out there. So glad to be able to show that, but also like to go into that with no context, as opposed to at least dropping in while we were working through the game and being able to learn what we're about through the actual process of exploring the game. Probably a harsh point of entry for that poor raider. All right, so that was step 1. Get to what they identify as map 7, and then they want us to go to map 10. See, all of the maps have numbers, which is great because that's easy for Aaron to follow along with without knowing Japanese. Okay, so it wants us to go down, I think. This may also, and again, because I can't read all of the context around these steps, it may take us in some familiar loops just to grab some chests that we already have, but I'm confident that if we proceed along the instructions, we will catch up with where we need to be in short order. I am glad that I thought of the guide because, like I said, it's nice to be able to use it and tell the story and have that multifaceted experience of the game dovetailing with Japan. But I will say my plan, if we weren't able to find a better map, was to truly just use the tried and true Greek way of getting out of the labyrinth. You all know that? So you all on the stream probably do, but on the off chance that you're watching this and you don't know how to get out of a labyrinth, and you ever find yourself trapped in a labyrinth, commit this to memory. Just put your hand on one wall and trace the labyrinth along one direction without ever taking your hand off the wall, and even if it leads you along a lot of misdirections and the wrong way and many dead ends, you'll eventually find your way out, which, to my recollection, is how Theseus, I want to say, found his way out of the labyrinth with the Minotaur. My Greek is rusty. I think it was Theseus who was put in that trial with the Minotaur. That's right, the old left-hand wall trick, Pottery. I had a feeling you would know what I was talking about right away. Yes, that's the key caveat. You have to be trying to get out. That needs to be your goal. If you're trying to find like a random chest situated in the middle of the labyrinth, as is often the case in a JRPG, that's not going to help you as much. All right, so now we're on map 10, and it wants to take us back to map 4, which will be through point O, and this is a pretty simple map. We'll be on map 4, and it wants us to go to map 6. All right. Ah, to have a plan. Okay, that's interesting, so... we were on 10, and then it said that takes us to 4. I think this is still the right place, though. Okay. And then 6 after that, which is that map, and the way into that is through P, which is on the other side. Alright. I'm gonna trust the map. It makes me anxious that it kicked us back to the first floor, but I think we may still be okay.
Remember your training. This is trouble.
Oh yeah, thank you for the gameplay reminders too, Grail. Yes, and whenever you want, obviously, feel free to make a plan and help with thinking about the post-game once we're done with this. I am more than happy to follow your lead there. The cameo battles, are those just at Warrior's Roost, or do we have to go somewhere else for them? There's an EX dungeon also, right? Didn't you say it's like a famously difficult to manage one? So I certainly want to try that at least.
Let's begin. Dance with fire.
That's right, just give me the escape rope. Ah, the good old days. Or the,
Everyone's fine. That's what matters.
oh, is it a... I forget the name of the bottle in Tales of the Abyss, but there's a nope out of a dungeon bottle in Tales of the Abyss. I'm sure one of you remembers the name. I have Danae bottle in my head, but I think that's from Berseria or Zisteria. Okay, so this was map 4, and it's supposed to take us to map 6, which will spit us out there. If this is working correctly. Okay. Good. Okay, yes. The fact that these 3D maps clearly replicate the 2D maps in this book is giving me a lot of confidence. Finally. I feel like we earned it through all of our struggling and walking in circles on a Friday night, though. It's like, I joke about taking advantage of the luck glitch in Demon Souls, if everyone knows what I'm talking about, but I always say, it feels like I'm getting a reward as opposed to cheating, exactly because I've suffered through so many of Miyazaki's bosses and torture chambers before that. Alright, so we want to get to map 15 from map 6, which is point S. Looks like point S. Yeah, okay. So we want to spit through to the other side. Okay. Hold your breath. I think if this works, it ought to take us to a properly new area. Although I confess, we might already be on a new floor right now, and I don't think I'd be able to tell you that. First cameo in the main game at Warrior's Roost, others are in the EX dungeon, and then in the Warrior's... Okay, awesome. I mean, I think unless there are little, like, one-off side quests and scenes, my own inclination would be, why don't we give the EX dungeon a shot after this? Especially while we're in the whole, we have our muscles warmed up for dungeon crawling. So that would be my thought at least, but I am flexible. You know how I feel about cameo fights. I definitely want to do those if it's within our earthly power.
Let's keep moving.
And I will also remind the stream, and you, Grail, if you're thinking about our possible paths, I did fork the save before we went on to Lineage and Legacies, or before we went to the point of no return in the Guardia Shaft, so it should be easy for us to go back and try out any post-game or end-game stuff that we missed in the main game as well. Okay, I think this is the one we want. Alright, base 6, which should be map 15, in which case then we want to go to battle and then on to map 17, point Y and Z. Oh, okay, alright. So we'll see. I don't want to jinx us, but looking at these maps, it seems like things might smooth out from this floor onwards. And of course, then I'm going to jinx us and make some mistake and we'll get spat back to the beginning, but let's see. I think there should be some sort of decisive battle on this floor, and then things ought to change from there. Ah, smooth sailing. I love the reassurance from you, Grail. Thank you. That is amazing, Grail. And I know I said this before, but as someone who is not a big fighting game person, and maybe just has an attraction to that era of like fighting combat style, that was one of the many things that I really enjoyed about Tales of Eternia, the fact that it was all pixel art and lo-fi, but felt like a kind of arcade-style fighting game in the combat, and had, I would say, a lot of variety in the different techniques that you could use.
You're strong, Asbel.
But yeah, that sounds like
Not
a
at
huge
all.
testament to the
You're
developers.
really coming into your own.
He doesn't agree.
I feel like Pottery or Grail, you might have more to say about this, but again, this is one of those areas where I don't dabble as much in the indie scene or the ways in which smaller creators innovate, but it reminds me of something that I felt with games like Shovel Knight off the top of my head, and I'm sure there are other examples too, but Shovel Knight is the one on the top of my head, where a lot of teams, I feel like, that are smaller and have like clear visions for how they want the gameplay to work and the world to feel and things like that, will do what might be considered like lo-fi or retro graphics, but in a way that really heavily stylizes the game and draws you in a cool way, so it doesn't feel outdated. If anything, like, at least if you're someone like me, you feel more drawn into the world by it having a clearer point of view than just generic high quality graphics that gear towards realism. Oh, nice. This is the point that I was griping at on Friday, saying I can see it way off in the distance, but I have no fucking idea how to get there. We got there! Oh, looks like we made it. Well, I want to do them all, Grail, but you know that I don't need any excuse to watch you work through something on YouTube, so absolutely send me your footage. Mining samples.
What's this? Maybe it's like... Oh, I got it! These are...
Crystallized forms of Elith.
Hey! I was gonna say that!
That kind of knowledge seems a bit above your pay grade.
Oh, Lambda told me all about
Lambda is increasing Asbel's
Oh,
IQ.
hey! Like, ask Lambda what the crystallized Elith is for.
He says, figure it out for yourself.
Fine, I will! I got it! There!
The remains of crystals excavated from the lower strata for the purpose of collecting Elith sampling data.
Again, I was gonna say that!
Lambda is kind of a jerk.
Yes. We learned he was evil in the main game, but it takes an extra arc to realize that he's kind of a jerk. It's funny how those are kind of two different things, right? In terms of how you think about someone, the distinction between being evil and just being a jerk. Oh, that's interesting, Pottery. Yeah, I don't remember that coming up when we interviewed the team, but that's fascinating, and it dovetails with something we've talked about before too, in the sense that when creators and artists either give themselves constraints or work against and make meaning out of the constraints of the medium, that's oftentimes where a lot of the cool innovation and really memorable and stylized stories come from. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. That makes a lot of sense. Jerk with a heart of gold. No, that's more like Zelos than Lambda. Oh god, do we need to do a comparative analysis between Zelos and Lambda? I didn't have that on my bingo card either.
I feel the power of the core running through my body.
And if Lambda absorbs this power, the situation will be resolved.
What is it, little bro?
It's just, I've never trusted Lambda.
Me neither. When Asbel said he was going to ask Lambda for help, I was against it.
A perfectly reasonable reaction.
I totally trusted him.
Did you actually trust him? Or was it merely your usual blind faith that everything will work out?
Yeah, pretty much that.
Though in hindsight, Pascal's blind faith has proven itself quite accurate.
Yes.
The power
I
of
suppose
Pascal's
you could
intuition.
Say that. Now even I trust in Lambda.
Me too.
I as well.
Me too, me too!
Isn't this great, Lambda? See? People can change. Everyone believes in you now.
They all want you to hold the
It is
baby.
wonderful, Asbel.
That's great. And I know we've been talking about this throughout the act, but at a moment like that, in like the skit before the final confrontation, for that skit to be entirely centered on the party saying, I believe in this character who was the ultimate antagonist in our main journey, how cool and powerful is that? right? To truly be resolving to put their faith in him. Now I am annoyed because during that skit, I was rereading the map and I decoded the symbols that it was using for chests. So part of me wants to go back and get all the chests, but we're here and we wandered and stumbled around so much for the last stream. So I figure we'd forge ahead and we can always go back and get the chests if we want to later. I know. Well, don't pull at that thread, Grail, because the thing that I was thinking too was putting it in conversation with something like Tales of Destiny. How cool would it be to have made Lambda not a full-blown party member, but a party member in the same sense that a Swordian is, where he can acquire his own experience and get abilities that Asbel can then use? I feel like that would be such a cool way that's already within the Tales design language to show his growth and character development, and maybe even moral cultivation if you put like some moral alignment behind it, in a way that would just supplement what they're doing here. But like I said, I don't want to pull on that thread because I love what they're doing already, and I don't want to make it out as if I'm griping that they didn't do even more. That's not fair. Oh yeah, that's really cool, Pottery. And I can see how, when the rest of the game was confined within the NES's limits, those few changes could give a really cool, almost magical effect, especially to gamers who grew up gaming on the NES, almost like it's pushing beyond its own boundaries by doing things that were, like, literally impossible on that system, but otherwise masquerading as if it was something that was just made for that system. That's very cool. Ah, what a cool team, Yacht Club. All right, friendos. Oh, it's the big descend. I guess before this I should check. Are there any other easy ways to go from here to get a chest? B or I? No, I think that would kick us way too far back with the fact that these are all one way. That's alright, we can leave it. Ah, yeah, that makes total sense. What a cool question to organize your design thesis around. Back to the artificial garden aesthetic?
Breeze? It feels nice.
Yeah, for sure.
This place looks really different.
It doesn't look like someplace people would build.
I bet most of it is natural, and they just built around the rest.
Or the Calyx. I immediately thought of the Calyx too, Grail. It has that vibe, sort of otherworldly islands of green. Yeah, I haven't heard much about their next game, Pottery. Do they have a timeline on it? I feel like they've been building out Shovel Knight for a long time with all of the DLC and like the arena game they made around it and stuff like that.
Guys, heads up!
I don't like this though, because we saw so clearly that they were docile back in the, was it Arcadia Garden? I don't want to keep fighting them. Little Queen, stop this, please.
Listen well, invaders of Fodra. You will never reach Fodra's core. I'm trembling.
Did we decide, Grail, whether these egregoroi have some foundation in myth? Because it certainly sounds like a mythical name. I think you said your internet wasn't working, or Wikipedia wasn't working the last time you checked. Never follower. Oh, well, you certainly said enough right there to get me really interested in keyed in Fodra. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Because I feel like they usually show up pretty consistently at PAX, but I feel like I haven't seen them there lately. I'll have to see if they're teasing anything to do with it the next time we go. Oh, Dance Fantasia. Glad I didn't miss that message, Grail. That's very interesting. Great name for this track. I'm not going to put on my crackpot conspiracy theorist hat and argue that she has some connection to Acelia for that reason. But that is a great name.
This cannot be.
This cannot be. One of those decisive battles with no victory quotes. An esoteric concept, alright, I'm listening, representing a non-physical entity or thought form that arises from the collective thoughts and emotions of a distinct group of individuals. And, Pottery adds, in Destiny 2 is a plant that thrives in and grows towards sources of primeval darkness, and it's called egregor. I'm still not sure how to pronounce it. Very interesting. Yeah. Well, especially given the Greek derivation, that sounds totally of a piece with what we were talking about, even in terms of the Little Queen as this kind of expression or manifestation of the sentiments of the planet in a way that is perhaps more direct than what the Great Astral Spirit of Rena does, because we don't, at least for all that's said in Tales of Arise, it doesn't seem like the Helganquil are actual emanations of the Great Astral Spirit. It's just that the Great Astral Spirit is able to basically take over their will and control their minds. Whereas here it does seem more like, well, we're still not totally sure what Little Queen is. She's acting as a representative more directly of Fodra and Fodra's sentiments. And so it wouldn't surprise me if that extends to some of these native primordial creatures like the egregori also. In magical and other occult traditions, it is typically seen as having an independent existence, but in other kinds of esotericism, it is merely the collective mind of a religious community, either esoteric or exoteric. In the latter sense, as a collective mind, the term collective entity, preferred by René Guénon, is synonymous with egregore. See the usage overview below. Interesting. So and actually that's a really cool addendum, Grail, because that really tracks academically with a lot of what we've been wrestling with about Little Queen, and probably even questions we've been asking in terms of Sophie and some of the other individuals in this game up to this point. This question of, well, where does their individual identity and sense of self end, and their group membership begin, right, as a representative of something larger than themselves. And then when you reach kind of the metaphysical and esoteric horizon there, with thinking about like the nature and intentions of the planet or the universe itself and metaphysical representatives of that, the question just becomes all the more pressing. Not unrelated to the stuff I'll be publishing on tomorrow, especially with regard to Dawn of the New World. So that'll be a fun tie-in to consider once that's published and we're chatting about it. And darkness in Destiny 2 is, in a sense, a kind of collective consciousness. So there you go. Don't you love it when storytellers and creators give thought and meaning to the names they use? People these days, not categorically, but I feel like so many people are quick and ready to write off names as something that creators threw in just because they sound cool or foreign or something like that. Whereas more often than not, I feel like it's the approach that you were talking about in your own works of fiction, Grail, where if you're a creator who cares that much about the story that you're telling, naming is such a sacred act as it's been represented, exactly as it's been represented in Tales of Grace's F with all the instances of naming. And so if you're a creator with that level of care, of course you're going to also consider the origin of the names that you're using and what it has to do with the meaning of the character, what they represent, even to the esoteric extent that we're quickly coming up on as we race to the core of really all being and life, since it all emanated from Fodra. So let's see what's next on that horizon.
We must destroy the humans.
I'm going to copy your background on the egregoroi quick so I don't lose it, Grail, because that might be fun to write about later.
She's gone. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just thought I saw something. Lambda, what's happening?
If you continue, Fodra's consciousness may force its way into your mind.
Just picking up, remember that foreboding thing that Lambda said back when Asbel was first putting together his plan of letting Lambda take over his body, saying, you know, if you do that, that thing that you call Asbel, your sense of identity, separate from the collective consciousness of all things, is going to disintegrate. And so the question and challenge for Asbel is not going to be so much, will Lambda betray me, but will I be able to re-individuate myself from everything, or more specifically from Fodra, after I do that. So notice everything we were just talking about in terms of the Little Queen and the egregoroi is also at issue in terms of Asbel and what he's planning to do, and how that'll affect his personal outcome and the outcome of the universe.
Fodra's consciousness?
If you are forced to experience her billions of years worth of memories, your mind will collapse entirely.
No, it's female. That's interesting. We didn't get genders on the Great Astral Spirits in Tales of Arise.
I would prepare myself if I were you.
That's an interesting theme too. So this is something that's come up in my work that I've published already, and you'll see some more of it in my new work. But I think a very common and I would say core theme in a lot of the Tales games is this idea that history and the past is incredibly important, but important from a pragmatic standpoint. So it's not worth remembering just for the sake of remembering or being beholden to those things that have come before you, but it's important as a context for informing who you want to be at this moment and what you want to achieve in the future. So for instance, in Tales of Graces, like we've been talking about, one way in which that manifests is this idea that your past, the things that you've been through with particular people, is something that can only be shared or communicated to others in a way that makes sense for the context shared between them. Which is why, for instance, Malik can't bring up his past in Fendel with the rest of the party throughout the main game, right? So that idea that part of the risk of what Asbel is putting himself up to is being crushed under the total weight of history, basically with no pragmatism or filter behind it, just the totality of events that have no rhyme or reason to them, but simply are in this monolithic sense, is something that I can feel the threat of specifically within the worldview that the Tales series has put together and how these characters think about their own histories and what it takes for them to live their lives. Oh, that's interesting, Grail, that you assumed they were feminine. Yeah, I never had that thought. I guess in Tales of Arise, I kind of leaned towards the idea that just gender wasn't something that really applied to the collective consciousness of massive energy. So yeah, it's interesting to have it named, whereas it wasn't before. Oh, I forgot that Rena is referred to as the mother of the Helganquil. No, I don't think it makes you sexist. I think, if anything, like you're kind of pointing to with the idea of mother of the Helganquil, I feel like there is something sort of maternal about a planet as the natural home and origin of life, kind of tending to it and making it possible and nurturing it. So maybe that makes me sexist, but I don't think so. I think a large part of what these games negotiate in terms of their thinking about the spiritual and the mystical is something that I also talk about in my work on Tales of the Abyss, which is that, speaking of esoteric traditions, if you think about mysticism and the cosmology of the universe across many traditions, they oftentimes have like pretty well-defined notions of the difference between male and female energy and how those two things interact to bring about creation and growth and cessation and death. So I think there is something conceptually important there that we ought not to lose simply out of a fear of being sexist or something like that. Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying, just because I don't want to lose it, yeah, I think one thing that stuck out to me in the playthrough of the base game was that it's not even that Affinia is just called a moon. I think Emerald refers to it as a satellite or something. Like several of the things Emerald says when she's talking about kind of her right to assert herself and take in Lambda and take everything from Affinia sort of implies that Affinia is derivative of Fodra. And if we're right, and I think the game has maybe not outright said this, but I think it said everything but this, which is why we're on the same page about it. Like, if all life indeed derives from Fodra's core in a way that Affinia is incapable of, you could see why Emerald would be led to that repugnant conclusion in her effort to restore the mother world, so to speak.
Are you worried about Asbel? Oh, sorry. I don't mean to worry you, Sophie. It'll be okay. Asbel made a promise after all. I think it'll be okay too. Asbel always keeps his promises. Now make a promise to me! To you? What kind of promise? To continue our poker game when we return to Affinia. Poker? Pascal taught me poker when we were at the Immersian Enclave. It was fun. We played 150 games, and I won 149.
Wait.
Sophie's really good. A little too good. I only won the first game. Wait, hold on. What? That's what you were doing after being summoned by Richard? Yeah, we'd totally deal you in if you want. So, let's shut down Fodra's core and get back to Affinia already. All right. It's a promise.
We gotta finish the game so we can get back to our game.
I wonder if Pascal just acts like a goofball to calm us down when things get tense around here. A pinky promise. Sweet! I may lose to Sophie, but I'll run the table with you, sister. Or maybe not.
That's an interesting point, though, because my memory is kind of hazy here. Did Asbel promise that to someone, or did he just kind of promise that to himself? Because I know he was determined and resolved to become a knight to prove something, but I feel like that had like a bit of a different tenor to me, because he was more like, I'll show you. I'm going to make this vow to myself to become a knight, dad who doesn't understand me, and then I won't be like the Lord of Lant, as opposed to vowing to someone that you'll do something with them in the future. I'm trying to remember if that's actually a character trait of Raven, or if I just have inferred that over time based on his other character traits. Like when he goes to Namco Banda Isle, does he have a problem with that? It is interesting. One thing that I didn't realize, and I would want to read more about it to really get a firmer sense of how it cascades into games, but something I didn't know that Dan was telling me about while we were over in Japan is, I guess Japan has a very interesting history with gambling and casinos and things like that, because basically the way their laws are written and the culture around it is that you're not allowed to deal in any like betting games or bet on things where you can have an advantage based on skill, like presumably poker, I would imagine. But so the consequence being, if you like go into casinos or arcades in Japan, it's basically things like slots, like the pachinko machines. That's kind of the stereotype of gambling over there, which led me to think, just knowing that and not having known that before, and games like Odd or Even, which is also like one of the very first betting games that you get way back in Tales of Fantasia. So I have to imagine that kind of ethos and restriction has made its way into how the Japanese think about gambling in games too. But like I said, I learned enough to get my curiosity up about it, not really to have a deep opinion about it. Yeah, that's right. He gets super into Tales of Draspy. Yep, gotcha is another great example, Grail. Exactly. Like you can't develop skill at gotcha. The essence of gotcha is exactly what I'm talking about. We're tainted by the burn element. I don't love the sound of that. Yeah, right. She gets the title from the guy in Capua Nor Torum, one of those who draws her into the again a very chance-based game.
Okay, let's do this!
Horku Kamoi. Another name for you. Yep. We've all got the burns. It's burns all the way down. Oh man, I feel like I'm back on the Heavenly Step. But it's part of the main game now. Which is itself very interesting. Great name for this theme. Love this theme. We've heard it before, haven't we? It sounds familiar, just like we haven't heard it in a while.
We won't fail.
An orchestral remix. Okay, got it. Oh, you know, this is, I don't think this is like the character trope that you were talking about, Pottery. I'm sitting here still going through my Tales Rolodex and trying to think of gambler characters. But I do feel like the pirates, like Patty and all of her like gambling-based moves and the way that she approaches things, I think you could see as at least allied with the idea of gambling in games of chance. And you get that, I would say, more explicitly in the source code for Patty, the character Chat from Tales of Eternia. Her whole lineage is very concerned with game making and games of chance and things like that. But like I said, I have a vision in my head of the trope that you're talking about, and I think it's slightly different than that. Almost like a Malik type who has a gambling problem. I feel like that would be really interesting. To my knowledge, I don't think they've done that. Yeah, I would have to go back to her her adventures on the seas with the party because those aren't fresh enough in my mind. Which is why I kind of punted to Chat, because Chat is much more like, I think it's fair to say, and you know, Grail, you can tell me what you think, but I would say it's fair that Chat is more holistically a gambling and gaming oriented character than Patty is. Oh, that's okay. So here's a thought. Because he's a funny case. So you said Rokuro. I was thinking Aizen, because he has the Reaper's Curse, right? And so he's certain that he's always going to have bad luck. But I feel like you could certainly do a reading of Aizen according to which his awareness of the Reaper's Curse makes him feel like he's a gambler going in with the odds stacked against him whenever he goes into like any of the scenarios he finds himself in the story. So again, maybe not quite the Rokuro type that you're thinking of, but I feel like that's a decent answer to that question, Aizen. That would probably be my my settled thought on it, besides Chat and Patty. I had forgotten that. Bet everything on the Lion's Hell. There you go. Well, that's what made me want to mention it, Pottery, because I don't know enough to say that with certainty, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you're right. Yeah, that's a good point, Grail. I haven't considered that. That's more important. Let's heal Sharia.
Pulled it off, somehow.
Alright, well maybe it is worth it to equip those burn charms real quick. Red liquid? Oh, mitigates the burn ailment, Ellis. There you go. So I think maybe we want to deal with that crystal that we passed by right at the beginning. I need to figure out what the dealio is with this floor. But let's see how many burn charms we have. Do we not have any? Oh, hilarious. I don't think we do, unless they're hiding at the bottom for some reason. That's so funny. Alright. Well, we'll just have to be prudent in other ways, which we can certainly manage. Gold Stasher and National Budget Stasher. Did we just hit a certain threshold of gold or something? Over 500k? That must be it. Go team. That's right. Can't punish you for getting hit if you don't get hit. Okay. That seems good, I think. Oh, okay. Sure. Sure. The Elith has returned to normal. Cool. Alright, we solved it. So now I imagine we want to get to a different floor and do that with a different type of Elith that's going to ruin our lives in a different way. I just can't wait. We can go back up at least. These ones aren't one way. That's generous. This is a nice little ethereal background track also.
Game on! Gotcha! Yeah! There! Charge! Strike! Roar!
Yeah, I think my best explanation for that, Grail, is in that skit that we saw by the Elith Crystal deposits, where that was a nice little piece of just found environmental storytelling of how the people who used to live on Fodra were excavating and researching Elith from the core. So, and cool also in a society where we've already been to several of their R&D labs to have to basically work through the research level of the path to the core before actually getting to the place they were drawing their samples from. So, a bit of a pain, maybe, but I like that because without them beating us over the head with it, I think it's a good way of telling a story of some of the history of the world and its society. Giving us a bit more context and reaffirming what we already know. Okay, what's over there?
Be careful, everyone.
Yeah, I was getting that exact sense, Grail. Feels like the enemies are tough, they're rewarding, but they're not impossible. Nice balance.
We
Hey, go team. They are awesome. Goodness, it is a big area, isn't it? Okay, that one takes us down. Yeah, it only took them 90 hours, right? There's a lesson in there about relationships and synchronicity and so on and so forth. I think I will go down on that elevator after this. Well, I am grateful to that map because I have no doubt I would still be wandering around the upper research areas if we didn't have that guidance. So, thank you, Bamco, for making official guides. Please never stop doing that. Although I suppose with the modern standards of game design and what you've been doing with stuff like Tales of Arise, it's not as mission critical, is it? Please make more Tales games where you need to make more official guides for us to be able to get through them, Bamco. That's my rephrased ask. I learned a little... this is going to sound like word salad, but I was looking at that big giant tree, and it occurred to me to mention, speaking of big giant trees, I learned a little bit more than I knew before about Norse cosmology. Speaking of cosmology and esotericism for this article that I'm going to be sharing tomorrow. It's not a big part of it because I realized that if I wanted to really do that justice and do a deep dive, it would end up looking probably exactly like the study I did for Tales of the Abyss, which is a good study that I or someone should do at some point, but that took me a lot of time to get deep enough into Kabbalah to be able to do that justice. So this is much more of like, oh, here are some things I didn't know and have some really obvious correlations with the Azalea games about Norse cosmology, and here's how we can use it to bolster our interpretation of the text on the text's own terms. So,
be careful, everyone.
Especially if that's a world you have not dabbled in so far, I hope you find that interesting and meriting further study, because I'm definitely going to be looking more into it. Oh, that's true, and I hate slow, so I will I'll have to do that. The make games that need guides of speaking your language, Pottery, is that what you were referring to? I had a feeling that would resonate with you. Oh, we only have one. That's a bit of a drag, but one is better than none, and it'll avoid having to deal with this on Asbel. Oh, we talking about Yggdrasil. We talking about Yggdrasil. In the case of Symphonia, we're talking about Yggdrasil, but in the case of everything else, we're talking about Yggdrasil. And squirrels, and snakes, and eagles, and giants. From the Ginnunga Gap to the Nine Worlds, and Ymir in between. It absolutely does, which is funny because I don't know if it was this way for you, Pottery, but as a kid coming up and playing Symphonia, I heard Yggdrasil before I heard Yggdrasil literally anywhere, and so talk about a game teaching you to pronounce something the wrong way. In hindsight, I like it because I feel like for me, that does a nice job of distinguishing Mythos the character from this tree concept. And you might even imagine, this is speculative, but it opens the door to this nice kind of thought because you never actually hear, at least in the versions that we got of the games, you never hear the name of the tree pronounced because you hear them referring to it as Yggdrasil in Tales of Fantasia, but that version that we got is not voiced. So you can even imagine there's a difference between Mythos the man and the tree, and so the pronunciation changed when his name was given to the tree. So maybe his name was Yggdrasil, but the tree was pronounced Yggdrasil. It's kind of a nice thought, I think.
Remember your training.
Yeah, oscillating between different pronunciations of mana, I don't have as tidy an explanation for. I can't help you there. Mana and mana, they changed the pronunciation of, and Palmacosta to Palmacosta is one that is subtle but grates on me because Palmacosta is such a big part of Dawn of the New World, obviously. Oh, did they change to Hero? I don't remember that.
Your sword skills are amazing.
Thanks. I'll use them to protect us all.
I missed some of these messages. That is very funny about the victory quote, Grail. I hadn't realized that. I know. Well, the thing that was fun about this study, and we can talk about it more once I publish it, but it was a similar vibe to Tales of the Abyss, which was why I had to stop myself from going down this rabbit hole, because the more I unpacked what I was thinking about the thematic content of these games, and then the more I was kind of peering behind the curtain into Norse mythology, because I never really studied it all that much, the more I was seeing a lot of really earned and interesting resonance between the two. So again, similar to what we were saying with the names, right? Like, I think people are very quick to think that's just a mythology skin that creators throw on just for the sake of seeming interesting or edgy or foreign, and at least in the case of the Azalea games, I think that is certainly not the case. I don't know if that's ever the case in Tales games. That's just not how these creators roll. And no, Grail, to my knowledge, I don't think there's a giant in the games. But notice, and this is, forecasting some of the stuff that I talk about in the article tomorrow, the giant whose body is used to create the cosmos as we know it is named Ymir, and kind of the foundation for life in the worlds is the race that is later sequestered to the Ymir forest.
Sorry about that.
So there's a symbolic giant, if not a literal one. Oh yeah, now that you say it, Fodra, they might change it to Tefa Allah as opposed to Tefe Allah.
I hope I was of some use.
That might just be one of those ones that was roughly as subtle as Palmacosta to Palmacosta, but didn't hit me quite the same way for some reason. Maybe just because stuff like mana versus mono was so grating that my mind crowded out the other examples of that. You would think they'd just have like a pronunciation guide to keep those things standardized across the games, but not so much.
Be careful, everyone.
Okay, yes, I will try for Malik's fourth mystic again, Grail. I've got an eye on his gauge. I was just thinking the same thing. How long had it been, Roper, my beloved? Actually, not that long, because I remember being tortured by them when we briefly went back to the Warrior's Roost and got wrecked. But beyond that, I had certainly missed them. They're so good and pure and fair and balanced. I love that about pronunciation in the Midwest too, Grail. Yeah, certain phonemes just kind of blend together, don't they? Having spent some time in the Midwest and with people from there, that certainly tracks. Roper, oh no! Don't give them ideas. Okay, can I do it this time? There we go.
Ready for this? Luminous, celestial, thundering, spreading light of cyclonic butchery!
That was awesome.
That wasn't pretty, but a win is a win.
That felt to me like a 6th tier like Yu-Gi-Oh monster or ability where just the name spills off the page. It's so long and convoluted and epic. My boy. All right. Hopefully by now, between his hidden mystic and his Excel finality, we've done our boy some justice. Long overdue, but we made it. At the cost of Asbel's life, but that's a price I'm willing to pay. Alright, we'll keep an extra eye on Malik next time. Yeah, I don't think for me anything is gonna ever top Malik Beam in the history of forever. Like, that was worth the wait and then some, but that's definitely up there at, you know, maybe one tier below for just being epic and hilarious. Oh, I see. These are special enemies that yield the liquid that we need to dissolve the crystals. That's why they're just hanging out. Circle gets square. See, he may not be able to always work through labyrinths on the first time, but he gradually learns the different mechanisms that are required to advance in some dungeons. My boy. Oh, you mean the Asbel art that we were talking about last time? I don't think I see it. Is he still working on it? Because I think it was at the very end of this title. Yeah, Diabolic Rage. I assume that's what you were talking about, Grail, unless you had another one in mind. I know, I was really expecting that we would find more of those bottles that give you extra skill points along the way for that reason. I'm kind of surprised we haven't. So what do we think that is? Is that incentive to get players to New Game Plus with all the features that let them use, you know, different characters and abilities in the base game, or is it to incentivize them to do the extra content like the EX dungeon to get a lot more skill points? What's the design thought there? Yeah, New Game Plus or the EX dungeon. Those would be my first thoughts.
Are you alright, Sharia? Can you stand?
If only Asbel could be this kind.
My lad. Too focused on victory. Purple liquid! Extracted from monsters. So, okay, this is interesting. I'm just trying to think through the logic of what's going on here, because we know that the monsters are derived from the core, and we know that the monsters are evolving in these weird ways because of the core's sentiments, the collective consciousness. That's still a little bit of a question mark. But so it's by extracting like the essence of these monsters that we're able to actually mitigate the influence of the Elith. That's kind of interesting. So it maybe a little bit like we're reharmonizing the planet as we go, kind of fixing the balance of an Elith that is out of balance and causing the monsters to run amok. Yeah, that's interesting to me too, that they would have different characters on different clocks for getting all of their abilities. Maybe there's something to the idea of Asbel as the main character. You know, you want to further invest in him, and that takes more time, or you know, he needs to go through his cyclical journey more than once to really fully actualize his abilities, which seems kind of in keeping with the themes of Graces. Yeah, I feel like canceling out sounds right to me, Grail. And maybe given that they're rock monsters, maybe it's almost like, because we know, and we had that skit specifically talking about how Elith can crystallize and be stored in that crystalline form. Maybe it's almost like the rock monsters have a crystal lattice structure that has allowed them to absorb the same kind of condensed Elith, and so we like get a sample that we're able to then use against the crystals that are out of control or something. Sure, so they overcompensate for the characters who aren't as frequently in the party. Yeah, that tracks with like what they do for affinity levels in Tales of Symphonia and stuff like that. 7,500 times. Nothing crazy about that. Alright, I think I just took us back the way we came. We should be able to go further now. Okay. I saw another platform over here, I think. Maybe this one will take us down. You! Hiding in plain sight. Yes, you will take us down. Oh, not poison. I hate that the most. Gross, gross, gross. That's a status ailment where I care enough to check right away how many poison charms we have, because I don't want to have to deal with that. Oh, really? We have no poison charms? I don't even know how that's possible. Why would we not have randomly picked one up along the way? That sucks. A reach level 100 spell? That's kind of cool, though. I do... Tales of Grace's F might overcorrect for this, but I do oftentimes feel in JRPGs, and I would say especially in Tales games, that like there's too big a discrepancy for me between when the characters stop learning new arts and the maximum level they can cap out at. Like, okay, level 50, 55, you're done with arts, but then you want to push them to develop so much more, and the idea that they could almost double their overall abilities without actually innovating any new arts kind of almost feels unbelievable. So I wouldn't say I'm against the idea of a level 100 art for characters more broadly. I did dualize, I just didn't dualize for accessories. And see, I don't feel like that's fair, because I've been trying to do my level best to like dualize gems and take advantage of that system and enhance weapons. It's like, yeah, you use the system plenty, you just didn't use it in the one way that we wanted you to, because we wanted you to use it in every single conceivable sense. But I do definitely feel punished, so the punishment has been successfully received.
Basics.
It was a good time to remember that going into Excel mode can cure you of status effects, which is clutch for this floor, or for this whole area, obviously. Oh, a chest. Excellent. Mythical scale. A scale ostensibly taken from a monster. It's supposed to be a myth, but, well, here it is. That's one of those delightful items where I feel like I understand it even less than I did previously by reading the description. Ah, bummer. I hate that we missed a Pascal side quest. Yeah, this whole area is an interesting medley of Tales concepts to me, because like I said, I feel like we're descending down into a calyx, but it's a Calyx-style descent into the kind of place that we arrive at on the homeworld of Rena at the end of Tales of Arise, the base game, which obviously has a very different aesthetic and just tonal quality to it. The Calyx, with its connection to the Earth pulses and everything, and this game's use of localized memory of characters almost makes me hopeful that, especially given Lambda's suggestion that Asbel might be overburdened by all the memories of the world, maybe as we go further here we'll like run into some of those memories and experience them the way that we did with Lambda as we were going down the Guardia shaft at the end of Act 3.
Pulled it off, somehow.
Oh, Pacharia is not looking good. Yeah, I can definitely see how you would truly need like hundreds of hours to unlock everything and be able to fully use this battle system in every way that it makes possible. And honestly, I have to say, especially in the broader universe of ways that games play with battle complexity, because we've talked about this in some of the other Tales games, I think I'm coming out really liking Tales of Grace's F for that, in the sense that it makes it pretty easy and intuitive for you to unlock the different kind of ranges of motion for battle in terms of all the abilities that you have available, and lets you start using them pretty early on or at key story moments, and it's pretty easy to enhance them and beef them up. So you don't feel like you're missing out on anything, but then if you're the kind of player who really wants to invest a ton of time in making everyone out, of maxing everyone out in terms of their abilities, I mean to say, it seems like it's also well designed to make that process really rewarding and give you even more power across all of those different ranges of motion that you would never have if you just left it at sort of the base level of development. Another game I yearn to figure out how to play at some point. Tales of Destiny's director's cut, that is. Ah, there you are. Right. Now that I know what I'm looking for, this is a lot easier. Farah! Hi, Farah. Maybe we can become heroes. I was hoping for, yeah, no problem. But that's also a good quote. Sure, I can do that, Grail. We can put Richard back in the party for you now too, since we've seen Malik's different ones. More info. An Elf Burst. So not for Richard. Not for Pascal. Hubert has it for his first one. Yeah, I think that happened while Dan was here, I remember that. Sharia has it for her first one. Sophie. And not for Asbel. So just Sharia and Hubert on their first tier ones. Alright. I said this offhandedly to Dan when I made him start Tales of Eternia while he was here with me for a while, but I really do feel like Farah is probably one of my favorite characters in the entire Tales series. I don't know if I could rank every single character in a single list, but just everything about her personality, her past, the way she deals with the adventure, there's just something that comes together for me that is distinct and substantively more valuable than what you get in a lot of characters and character arcs. So, look forward to the inevitable Eternia stream is what I'm saying in so many words. Yeah, let me know if you find that girl. We can definitely prioritize it. We are running low on life bottles. Might have to see if we can get back to the shuttle at some point. There's got to be a way.
No mercy! It's time! Expunging sword!
My boy. Yeah, finally. It only took us like 92 hours. But see, now this is the sad part of Magic Carta, where I've gotten so many more of the characters I care about and know like the back of my hand, but I've also gotten many of the non-localized characters I couldn't pick out of a crowd of 2, so... I would go back and try it just for the walls. I would just be embarrassed with all the characters I don't know personally. I thought they were gonna get Asbel resurrected in time. You cowards! Phantom Pulse Master. Alright. I was wondering how long it would take me to get that. Alright, well, we got what we needed at least. I know, and I just feel like with all the magic and character study of the Tales series, it feels to me like it does violence to the series to just memorize the lines without knowing the context, you know? Which I'm sure sounds like Aaron being a purist, but hey, I'm allowed to be a purist. Is that a burst art? No, we don't have Heaven's Wrath. We can prioritize it if you want, if you tell me where it is. Drag, I forgot we can't use that from the menu in Graces. Alright, I'll revive Asbel. Damn it. I only know things about the games I've played, Grail. That's why I'm doing Tales of Praxis. Wanna heal. I think I checked all his arts, but I'll check the assault arts also. Maybe I didn't check there. No, I don't see Heaven's Wrath. Unless it's hiding somewhere, which they sometimes do. I don't think they are. It may or may not be an interesting question, but I also find myself wondering, obviously it has a little bit of a different, it has a very different cadence than your typical roguelike, but I wonder, substantively speaking, in terms of what you get out of it and the flow of it, if you think about a Tales game that you New Game Plus like a million times, right? In the sense that like, I haven't done this recently, but when I was a kid, I got Tales of Symphonia and I played that into the ground with New Game Plus after New Game Plus. Like, are there interesting points of overlap and continuity between that experience and what people oftentimes get out of a roguelike? Is there anything interesting to be mined there in terms of seeing our experience with the Tales game in different ways? So I do, like, I still think, I go through these games and I think about the ways in which they use New Game Plus, and it feels different to me than a lot of other JRPGs, even others that offer New Game Plus in their own styles. And I wonder whether there's something almost kind of roguelike about that. I guess you don't get the sense of having to restart every time you fail, which is pretty essential to the roguelike format. But in terms of taking things from zero and working your way through multiple times, sometimes with different abilities that are set, like you get in the grade shop, I feel like there's at least a little bit of overlap in terms of your experiences. The weak element, right? It might be interesting also to look to the model of Max, another one I know. She doesn't like pickles on her burgers. Oh, my man. Max, one of the most unsung tragic characters of the Tales fame. And stay tuned for the Tales of Eternia stream. It's going to be really fun. What was I saying? Oh, I feel like you could also maybe scaffold a model off of some of the EX dungeons. Like I'm thinking about things like Niflheim and Tales of Eternia's EX dungeon, where I feel like sometimes the gimmicks of those, even the Heavenly Step kind of, they're built around more almost roguelike-esque or roguelike adjacent struggles. And so if you looked at the combination of the structure of those and how the games design your navigation through them, and then also the themes that those dungeons are concerned with, maybe you could get an interesting model for what that kind of game would look like, both in terms of character arcs and themes, and also in terms of, as you say, Fodra, like combat requirements. Art Authority, okay. That sounds like a tiered title. That's maybe the next one up from Art Artiste, which is what Asbel has right now, and we just unlocked that, so we might not have it yet, but it might be worthwhile to see how to unlock it. Alright, let's see if we have the Art Authority title. Oh, we do have the Art Authority title. Never mind, we're good. So, but we're almost at Diabolic Rage, so I'd say let's get that done for Asbel, and then we can switch over to Art Authority. Do we have any bottles that can make this easier? No, we can recharge Elith, which might be prudent. We can also boost Krius attack, which is reasonable. Oh, but I said we could swap in Richard, so let's do that. After I use the herb on someone who's not Richard. What's our Elith? That is probably 0, right? Yeah. So we can fix that anyways. Boop. Alright, cool. Ooh, a weak floor. I'm not looking forward to this. But I feel like that's maybe one where we did have charms for some reason. Yeah, we have 2 somehow. Alright. I won't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Shall we begin?
Suffering is a good word for it, Grail. I don't just mean that in terms of having a bad time, but yeah, I think I'm still stuck on what we talked about last stream, how these Sigma enemies are quite clearly the same kind of thing that Lambda was when he manifested in the catacombs. And so I think the kind of suffering that is apparently endemic to the core of Fodra, or the passage to the core, I think combined with the enemies we're seeing here, to me, like, it does a really good job of showing how Lambda's story, which was so singular in the base game, was one of many. Like, I get the distinct feeling that any one of these enemies we're mowing down could have had sort of a similar sentience and experience of pain as Lambda had. Whether or not they actually did, like, they're all susceptible to and open to that. He's not materially different than they are. So I think that's a really good use of the dungeon. And then I also feel like with all these different levels and all the distinct forms of suffering we're experiencing and all the different status elements, it does, again, I know I keep ringing this bell, unintended I guess, but there's a reason for it. It feels like a very Buddhist passage through like all the different forms of suffering that are intrinsic to existence within samsara. Right? That was part of what led Siddhartha to meditate and pursue enlightenment and tried to transcend suffering in the first place, was witnessing all the different forms of suffering that are constitutive of living in the world. And so the idea that we're firsthand experiencing those as we descend further to the essence of being and the origin of life, as we were talking about before, I think is a great way and a very Tales way of synthesizing the mechanics of a dungeon and its topology with the themes that the game is asking us to consider as we're working through this. Turning dungeon nav into a metaphor, basically. Which is, I don't know if that's something that's come up explicitly in my studies yet, but it certainly will before all is said and done, because I know, in fact, that the Tales series is so deft at that. My volume like Aaron's volume? Yeah, absolutely. Let me just do that now so I'm not multitasking. Okay, so I turned the game audio down a hair, Grail, just because I didn't want to overcorrect. Let me know if you need me to change it more, and I'm happy to do that. Yeah, kind of fighting the surviving Fodrans, Grail, in a similar way to what it was for us to fight Helganquil, like the original real Renans in Tales of Arise, right?
Nice, Richard. That was impressive.
Well, I'm nowhere near your level, Asbel.
Pottery, I'll ask you this because I get the sense from the games you've talked about that you're much more into roguelikes than I am, which is not saying much because before Inscription, I think literally the only roguelike that I played was Returnal, but I'm interested in your take on this. Do you feel like the connection between roguelike storytelling and roguelike mechanics is also well explored at this point? Because like I said, I don't have a sense of it because I don't really play roguelikes. They're not a genre that I gravitate towards, but something that struck me as unusual just because of how like compelling and well executed it was the marriage of Returnal's story and the themes it was exploring and the cyclical nature of processing identity that was central to what it was concerned with from a narrative perspective, and then its roguelike mechanics of navigating the world, that kind of narratively oriented dungeon navigation that I was just talking about in terms of this dungeon. So I'm curious whether that's something that roguelikes have also become sort of formulaic at doing in a really compelling way. Because honestly, that would probably incentivize me to play more roguelikes, because I didn't have the sense that that was well worked out in the genre. But I truly don't know.
Stand strong.
Yeah, that was kind of my impression, which is why I asked. Well, then I'll put it this way. I hope more roguelike design, especially if the mechanics are well worked out at this point, focus on working out that intersection between gameplay and story, because when that hits, oh man, like that's the reason Returnal is one of my favorite games of the last recent years. Yeah, fair enough.
I'll show you my true potential. Asterism line.
That's a very good point about the difference between these and the Helganquil Grail. No, I think that's a huge difference. And I'll tell you exactly why. It's going to make me feel awful again, but it's that vivid experience I was talking about of witnessing those egregoroi, or whatever their names were, in the garden, just, as you say, hanging out, being completely natural, the way you would see just a deer in a meadow or something. So knowing that they are in tune with just their natural state and inhabiting the world, and yet knowing that by embarking on this quest of ours to change things, and from our perspective, fix the natural order of the world, we're encroaching on their territory and just brutalizing creatures that are not, as far as we know, intrinsically brutal or violent. That's awful, and it is very different than this broader collective consciousness puppeting the Helganquil so that they're not even like present in their existence until they get outside its realm of influence. I also wouldn't say that Rena is being malicious, though. That's my read of that. But I do definitely think the kind of influence that it is exerting is different in kind than what Fodra is doing. You know, so I'll reiterate, I'm interested to see how this wraps up, because I still don't feel like we've gotten that clear an explanation of what it is that Fodra is doing. I would not say as clear as the sense we have of the astral spirit of Rena at the end of Tales of Arise. So I'm hoping we get more there. That's why I'm playing it, bro! That's why I'm playing it! Give me like 24 hours. That's probably what I'll spend my Tuesday evening on. Nice glass of wine and a horrifying metagame to celebrate publication. That's about Aaron's speed. Oh, why?
Hold it off somehow.
Boy, these girls are not pulling their weight in terms of revival. I'm gonna leave him dead, though, because I'm really anxious about my life bottles. Okay. Interesting. Well, yeah, I would say let's I guess we don't have to put a pin in it, Grail, but I'll say I've kind of put a pin in that because that's part of why I didn't finish my write-up of the lecture that I gave at PAX West about Tales of Arise, because working through Beyond the Dawn, there's a lot in there that I would like to integrate into my reading because I think it's very interesting. But I would say remember that one of the things that came up in Beyond the Dawn, which I think is my best interpretation of what's going on with the astral spirit and the way in which it expresses itself, is I think the astral spirit of Rena I read as something primordial and almost supra-rational, in the sense that if you look at what Rinwell says about it, which is basically our most direct beat on what the great astral spirit is, she talks about it as the expression of a feeling. This sense that the world is not as it should be, and the energy needs to be different than it is. And so my way of making sense with that, along with the plots like the crown contest, and then crucially the plot that we see unfold with Nazamil in Beyond the Dawn, is I don't think there's a rational scheme intrinsic to the great astral spirit of Rena in terms of, oh, I have this end in mind and I'm going to undertake this specific means in order to achieve it. My read of it is I think the great astral spirit of Rena is kind of just broadcasting this feeling that things need to be different than they are. And when that broadcast hits beings that are apt to hear it and resonate with it, like the Helganquil, then they're left in this position of having to try to make sense of this supra-rational feeling. And so in their rationalization of it, that's where the schemes come in, of like the Helganquil trying to figure out some way to satisfy the sense that things need to be otherwise. And so they come up with engineering the crown contest or the whole machine and lock and key mechanism that Nazamil is a part of. And maybe we do or don't want to assign malice to them for that reason. I kind of read it more as, especially given the perspective we get on the Helganquil from Hevricht 37, more of just they're trying to make sense of this thing, this sentiment that is foreign to them and they don't understand. And so their rationalization is almost a coping mechanism more than anything. And in that sense, it's hard for me to find fault in them. But I don't think the kind of consciousness that we see in the great astral spirit is something to which it makes sense to attribute malice. Can we actually warp now? Can we use one of the warp points? Well, I'm definitely going to save first because I'm scared of warp points at this point in the dungeon. I'm also excited for the skit entitled Pain is the Great Teacher. Yeah, I was thinking of changing the shortcuts up for that reason, because I had it that way, as you say, and I changed it back. Oh, that's funny to me, Pottery, because Outer Wilds is just a game that I've heard many times that I need to play, and I feel like when people have described it to me in the past, they have described it as a roguelike, which is funny given what you just said. I've never played it, so I wouldn't know. But okay, so then what is its actual genre if it's not roguelike? Yeah, I was hoping it's a teleporter to restock, so I'm definitely going to do that, but let's watch the skit first.
I admire the strength it takes to merge with Lambda and believe in him.
I haven't played Outer Wilds because my backlog is unstoppably dense. Dude, have you been paying attention? You know me. I've been saying how I started Inscription and I can't even get through a short game that I've already started and am excited to work through because I have so many other game-related things going on. No, you can't tell me that. That's not fair. Don't break my my inertia. What little of it that I have, I'm begging you. It's on the list. I told you it's not as if I've never heard of it. I know that it's something that warrants being on my list. It just it's a long list, but I'll bump it up the list accordingly, given that comment of yours.
Honestly, I'm still a little worried. I don't know if Lambda really has the power to stop Fodra's core. I mean, will absorbing all the Eleth really do it? There's no way to know for sure. I guess all we can do is have faith.
It takes a great deal of fortitude to say that. I wish I possessed the same kind of strength to protect Windor.
Come now, it is merely youth and inexperience that gives him such strength, Your Majesty. Remember that, Asbel. Countless trials and tribulations await you, and you must steel yourself.
Whoa, come on. There's no need to scare me like that, is there?
There is truth in the captain's words. Enduring painful experiences would benefit you in the end.
Yeah, you know, I guess you're right. I've never been thrown into a strange environment and had my personality all twisted up by it. I've never survived the misery of coming between a friend and a lover before losing them both. Perhaps transcending
Jesus.
such hardships would indeed teach me true strength. That's all the more reason to focus on the matter at hand with Fodra's core. I will give it everything I have. Now who's with me? Wait, no one?
Hubert and Malik seem to have taken that harder than I would have anticipated.
Huh? Taken what?
That strikes me as the perfect encapsulation of so many of the things we've been saying we love about Tales of Grace's F as we're wrapping up this arc, because what a perfect skit in terms of resonating with navigating the nature of suffering, like we were just talking about with regard to the specific dungeon, but also what a great note of very Tales of Grace's humor to touch on, with Asbel's unawareness of the very personal and direct struggles of other people in his party. Like, it hits everything you want from this beautiful game. I do remember, but doesn't it feel like a long time ago? 90 hours or so at this point, Grail. Well, and I will say this to Grail's previous message. I mean, like I said, I do have a list. I have many things that I want to play. As you know, one of my favorite kinds of game to analyze and think about is the epic, tens or hundreds of hours game of the sort of JRPG that we're playing right now. So if there are games that, you would categorize as shorter, work through very quickly, use as palate cleanser games, feel free to also round those up for me, because I feel like when I have a game recommended to me, I don't always know its length, and so I don't know when it makes the most sense to slot it in. So that might actually help nudge Aaron to work through some of his backlog, as Grail anticipates. Hey, look! All right, looks like actually we have 2 of the teleporters working now. Isn't that something? I'll bet the other one spits you out to the top of the approach to the core. Yeah, let's give ourselves a nice hearty rest and restock. Yes, and another one that belongs to your favorite category, Pottery. Well, knowing you and knowing what that means to you, that's the only kind of endorsement that I need. I will say this. I think I said this on the stream quite a while ago at this point. But one project that an analyst for With a Terrible Fate, not me, someone else, Camus Ducharme, if you want to look up his work, and he's done some really great work for the site. He is toying around with the idea of this project doing basically the kind of extensive study that I did for Majora's Mask for Outer Wilds, because he's a super fan of that game and has been for a very long time. He's also very busy with wrapping up his undergraduate degree, which is why he hasn't done it yet. But it's something that is in the ether, so sooner or later, odds are, I'm hoping, you will see something from With a Terrible Fate about Outer Wilds, but I will also definitely, on personal recommendation, be more than happy to play it. Outer Wilds, Inscription, Tunic, and Celeste are all in the 8 to 15 hour range. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's a nice digestible range, especially in comparison with my typical range. Good to know. I had that feeling about Inscription and Tunic, but I wasn't sure about Outer Wilds or Celeste. Those were 2 kind of question marks for me, so thank you, Pottery. That will be material in helping me to plan some of my breaks. Breaking up games with other games. It's how we roll, isn't it, Praxis gamers? Oh, okay. Yes, we have something else to do. Thank you, Grail. All right, briefly head to Zavhert and talk to the old man at the docks. Not the port, but the docks. Okay, sure, absolutely. A little break from the descent into whatever the hell awaits us. There we go. No, Zephyr. Take me to the docks. Where are the docks in Zavhert, Grail? Because I would have just gone to the port. Are there docks in town that I just don't remember? Oh, leave through the front door. Okay. I think it's definitely one that has come up on the stream before, Pottery, because, like I said, I definitely remember mentioning that Camus has this idea to do some work of his own on the series. I don't remember in what context. You know, it's one that I feel like I know a bit about just from talking with him and hearing some of the things that are very, very cool about it. But no, I'm embarrassed to say it's one of those modern classics that I have not gotten around to yet. So which man are we talking about, Grail? This guy? Oh, are you looking for the Karta King? Is that what you were going for? Nothing quite like magic Karta cards. Hey! Well, I'm glad you nudged us back here for that, Grail. That was definitely a worthwhile get right now. You've surpassed the number of cards I owned back when I was a lad. You're a true Karta collector. Oh, I love that. There's such an old-timer card game collector vibe to that. Like, I definitely resonate with that as an old-school Yu-Gi-Oh player at this point. I wouldn't say I'm against obscure Metroidvanias if there's something interesting to be gleaned from them. Like, I guess Hollow Knight isn't obscure at this point, but I have so much love for Hollow Knight. Speaking of games that I have played, I do play games other than JRPGs. It's funny because a lot of my first work for With a Terrible Fate was on games that were not JRPGs, but you spend a year on Xenoblade and a year on Tales and a season on Final Fantasy VII, and suddenly everyone thinks you're Mr. JRPG. Identity crisis. All right, if I level up that title, I can do the thing. The Karta Collector title, Grail? Is that what you're talking about? Or a different title? Diabolic Rage? Are we looking to get Diabolic Rage? Was that the goal of this? I'll let you confirm because I don't want to accidentally misuse the item we just went out of our way to get. The combo activation. Which title is that? Is that on, is it on Karta Collector? Oh, I see. Stampede Strike. Yes, okay, super. Alright. Oh, that is a pretty good one to get. Alright, yeah, let's do that. Now, how far up will that actually bump us, though? Yeah, well, gave us a head start. Alright, super. And now, all the way back. Alright. Once more into the depths, my friends. Wow, I'm interested to see how far we get. The map definitely gave us a boost, but I'm not sure how much is left. And I'm not going to peek at the map, so I want it to unfold. It'll be interesting to see whether we actually wrap it up tonight or not. Okay, so this floor is still tainted. I'll save down here again. I also kind of get I haven't been keeping perfect track of this, but I feel like we've missed some of these floors too. And between that and Grail saying we still haven't gotten the really cool chests, I'm a little nervous about missing the really cool stuff. well, I don't know if I'm a good judge for obscure like I was saying before, but I certainly haven't heard of any of those before for what it's worth. Yeah. Well, it's definitely an area, now that I have my head on my shoulders about it, that I would like to go back and explore more at some point, just to see all the other areas of it. Doesn't look like we can cleanse this floor from here, though, so might as well move on for the moment. Is it a boss? I smell a boss.
How can there be such a huge open space all the way down here?
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen.
This place is teeming with life. But why?
Because we're approaching Fodra's core. Fodra's core.
What's wrong, Pascal? You seem quiet.
Well, this place is filled with plants and animals and whatever, right?
Right.
I had the same thought when we saw the flowers, but...
Hey Pascal, come on. You're starting to worry me.
There's one thing that should be here, but isn't.
People?
Which is... humans. There aren't any humans here. Exactly. Look at how beautiful
little
this
queen
planet
theme
is with
again.
no people around. I think that's why Fodra's been trying to eliminate all the humans. And this place is the result. No way. The little queens were born from Fodra's core in order to protect it.
Well, there's also an interesting thought here, not to interrupt in the middle of Pascal's really interesting monologue, but this idea that, oh, look at how beautiful this world is without humans, but that aesthetic quality of beauty, you might suppose, is also something that is anchored to a human or anthropocentric perspective. This idea that, well, without people to be there and judge it to be beautiful, it's almost a vacuous statement to call it beautiful. Like, that doesn't even really apply. So how much traction can we really get by saying the world would be more beautiful without people? So something to keep in mind as we move forward.
That would seem to match with what we've seen so far.
Remember what Fourier said about how creatures adapt to survive? Well, it looks like the core had that ability too. If humans were here, they'd eventually suck the core's eleth dry. I think Fodra is just trying to defend herself. So what does that make us?
From Fodra's perspective, we would seem like the very personification of evil.
And interesting, too, to keep in mind during this conversation, Emerald, because talk about the very personification of evil, and she was basically doing all of the wrong-headed human things and saying, I'm going to take all the Eleth and bring it back for our purposes and the purposes of our society and world on Fodra, where, ironically, we're now finding out Fodra's core was already teeming with Eleth and just decided, nope, everything that humans do just results in that being wasted and burned as a resource and otherwise abused. So I'm just going to withdraw from people entirely. So Emerald's very act to fix a problem that didn't exist kind of is reinforcing the path that Fodra's core seems to have taken in protecting itself.
Well then, it looks like the cavalry has arrived.
Humans. It is time to die. Perish now. and prepare the way for a brighter future.
Stand strong.
Good question, Grail. Good for us to keep that in mind, too. Well, and in the main story, it was almost as if, like, Lambda and Richard, when they were possessed and working together, wanted to become a peer of Fodra, in the sense of, like, they wanted to merge with the Lestalia and become the soul of the planet and kill all humans. So it was almost like they were aspiring to the same perspective and conclusion that Fodra seems to have already reached. In which case you might imagine that to the extent that the planet is capable of empathy, they would empathize with Richard and Lambda. Though it's perhaps a bit of a catch-22, because as we also saw, Richard and Lambda absorbed all the Eleth of the world in the process, which is kind of reinforcing what the planet is putatively against. Oh yeah, I forgot we were on that floor. This is a harder fight than I was expecting. Do we have any paralysis charms? I don't remember. We do, we have 2. It's better than 0. Oh, although maybe it's better to give that to Sharia. It's not my favorite so far. Definitely one of them. Oh my god, everyone's dying. Yeah, they're more individuated, which is really interesting. As we're approaching the core, they're kind of getting more individuation and clarity and ability. That all makes sense and is also very frustrating. Stop casting. I know that you're the caster, and I hate that. Alright, I think we got a leg up. That was a hairy moment, though. Hairy moment. That's a mystic art you don't want to be yours. Oof. Not a downgraded douse beam. She shoots us with a flower gun? That's nice. Dying is his whole thing. Dying and being sad and wanting to redeem himself, right? At least he's not as bad as Rose. Hashtag never forget. Oh no. It took so long that I forgot she had a mystic art up her sleeve. Oh no! Everyone's dead but me. That's not good. That's not good. Fuck. Fuck. How did that happen so fast? I think the magic of this game is they all kind of take turns being sad boys. Yeah, but I looked and I thought everyone's HP was a little bit better than that. I guess I was being too optimistic. You still stand? Barely, but yes. Oh, believe me, I am, Grail. Yeah, I guess 1 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Dodged into that. Oh no, there's more! Why did I assume that would be it? I'm the big dumb. The not so little and very many queens. That is fun though, Grail. It shows how much a game can lure you into expectations you don't realize you have just to subvert them by having a slightly different setup than usual. Like, as you say, multiple human bosses in one arena. I'd be happier with the 4 kings, honestly. I don't know if this was your experience, Pottery, but I had that hilarious and I think pretty common experience with the 4 kings during my first Dark Souls run, where I properly walked up to them, whacked them, and killed them without even understanding what the boss was, let alone really having to fight it. Talk about a funny joke climax to one of the most memorable areas from the first Dark Souls. It's enjoyable if it's a hilarious joke based on your build, before you even understand what builds are in Dark Souls. Arts that are strong enough to just wreck you and are also not a mystic, so they can use them even more. And in that way, it's kind of even worse than a mystic. Oh my god, leave me alone, leave me alone. Ugh, gross. I hate how much it downgrades your Excel gauge when you die. Stop! No one's gonna give form to your will. Yeah, you're right. You're right, you're right. And you think, why have one mystic when many mystic do trick? Yeah, I guess that's fair. I just like the Excel finality so much. It definitely feels like earned punishment when I get nudged further away from being able to use them. They did a good job of making them really motivating to try to get. God, and you can petrify us just as a joke? No! Girl, why? Okay, that wasn't as bad. Yeah, I believe that. Ah, that doesn't surprise me, but cool to know. That's some dualization we should look into then, because I do love those. Alright. This is fun too, because especially given the setup of the main antagonist as this collective consciousness hive mind boss that you have to fight so many times, I truly don't know like when the act is going to climax and what that is going to look like in terms of final boss, so makes me feel all the more like I'm along for the ride without really knowing the pacing of it, which is one of my favorite feelings in a JRPG. And rare these days, I think. That's one of those things where I talked a little bit about this in my first article for Tales of Praxis, but once you play a lot of any genre or read a lot of a genre or what have you, you get so accustomed to the conventions that it's almost like you can't read it with the same sense of organic discovery and seeing how things unfold as you go along, because you know what beats they're usually going to hit, you know when they're getting towards the end, things like that. So when you find those little magic nuggets where you rediscover that feeling, especially as a veteran of a genre, I think it's all the more magical for that reason. Well, we'll see. I'm definitely not in a rush. That's kind of part of what I'm saying. I'm just enjoying it unfold. Not that we need to dilly-dally either. But we got time. We got nowhere to be and everything to think.
I've never seen a more tenacious foe. They must really hate us.
Please, stop! They are not your enemy.
We hate them. We must destroy all humanity.
Boy, that's a really interesting line reading. Doesn't that just smack of what Sophie was saying about Richard and Lambda back when Emerald reprogrammed her directive into her in the main game?
Guys, I'm not sure we should keep fighting them. It's just starting to feel wrong.
I agree. The fight feels wrong to me as well.
We're not here to destroy Fodra.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't hammer it home more with the monsters like I was talking about, but it definitely hurts with the Little Queen. That would be interesting. Tales game or even a JRPG, and no spoilers if the Tales games do this and it's just one I haven't played, but a game where the heroes just decide to go home at the end and leave what they thought was the antagonist be, because they decided it's not worth fighting them or stopping them at all because of something they learn or whatever. Many is the Tales game where you come to understand the antagonist in a different way, or you decide something that they were striving for is worthwhile in a certain way. And again, talk about connective tissue between what we're thinking about now and Tales of Arise. That's an example of that, but I can't really think of one off the top of my head where you just walk away. Games where you want to walk away after you find everything out, like Nier Gestalt, but you can't.
We just want to let it know that humans can change. And that we're not the same as we were 1,000 years ago.
I think a big part of why I've gone on to do everything in the philosophy of gaming that I've done, Grail, is trying to cope with my sadness over Nier. So, yes, you're speaking my language.
Asbel. Okay, everyone. Let's get to the core.
Man, they're using that people can change line so much that I don't even think I can keep using the dangerous knights joke. It's too tired at this point. I need a different one. Guess we could go with Bojack. I can change and I will change. Another warp point? Well, these are pretty much all 2 ways, I understand it, so that's something. Is this the last one by the ship? Oh, that is not the... That's to the end. All right. Wow, so talk about being at the end. Well, that's breathtaking, but I was not emotionally prepared for that. So we'll go back for the moment. Yeah, we can do a last restock, I guess. Yeah, we have 20 minutes. I guess that is kind of the sweet spot to go back and restock, and then, God's willing, wrap things up, and then we can just post-game it. Start on that adventure on Wednesday. Let's do it. A long hike back to the other teleporter, though. Alright. Quick save. Good. What do we have for dualizing? Everlight. A rare mystical jewel that has been polished until it's blinding. Very cool. Oh, nice. We can make an Asbel figure. Carved out of calming jade. Looks more like him than Pascal's attempt, in my humble opinion. Its quality is pointless. I love some of these quality names. Alright. Unadorned. Did we get Richard's doll? I don't remember. I know we got a couple more of them. Let's do... this. That seems good. Cool. Strong, but a lot of experience. Yep, that was my guess based on just spying what looked like those special crystallized rock enemies we were hunting on every floor, wandering around like normal foes. Which, I'll be honest, is one of my favorite endgame area tropes in a JRPG, when enemies that were once special and terrifying are still terrifying, but absolutely commonplace. It's a lot of fun. Really makes you feel like you're growing stronger and facing larger threats. Power creep oriented storytelling in the best sense. I did this already, right? Okay. Tales of Arise maybe does crank it up to 11. I think I still come out as a fan of it, but I agree. They make it a little harder to get on board with. Okay, I think I'm going to assume I can also take the paralysis charms off of them now. Let's do that one. All right, I feel good. Let's do it. So deep, and down we go. That is an interesting twist of my experience and expectation as a player too. I'm thinking about what we learned in that last conversation about how this is a pure form of the world where the Eleth has been untouched by people, and the fact that I was so accustomed to the way the world looks with the influence of people that my first assumption when we encountered that garden up above in Fodra was, oh, this has got to be some kind of illusion or artificial projection. I think that says a lot about the anthropocentric point of view, like we were talking about before.
I'm trembling. Why?
Oh my god, so like every enemy is a proper mini-boss. That's pretty cool, but pretty daunting. Oh, and there's more than one of them. Got it. Yes, Grail, I will reiterate to you, another thing I'm very excited to do after I publish tomorrow is enjoy and take a look at that writing, so thank you for that. Really excited to get that kind of first peek at it, so thank you for that. Yeah, let's see if we can find a chest somewhere. I'm thinking, looking at the time, it might be worth it just to explore this area a bit and then see the story through at the beginning of the stream on Wednesday, which might be a cool vibe too, because I feel like we always push like way past the end time when we're wrapping a story up, and it might be nice just to have some extended bandwidth in the ordinary time frame to discuss it without feel like we're pushing the envelope or we're tired for it. But we'll see how the next little bit develops in this area. Doesn't seem totally fair that you can do that while I'm in Excel mode, but okay. What is it called? Oblivite Hulk. That's a cool name. loves throwing us. Oh no, for sure. And I love that term for it, reversal. I don't think I've heard that before, not being in the fighting community, but that totally tracks with it. I just feel like, especially for Asbel, with that kind of barrier that Lambda developed to shield them in the Arcadia Garden, I wanted to give them more armor than it does. But it can't be all powerful. I understand that.
Asbel, why do you wear such white clothes?
Oh, these? Well, let me think.
That was quite a bit of experience. Oh yeah, well it seems like every enemy in this area is that type, which A, is really cool for an amazing area design. I mean, look at this with the core and all of the crystals, and also how different it looks from the descent into the Lestalia in Affinia, if you can remember that. I feel like this looks much more harmonious, like we're, again, in keeping with the theme of this fourth act, like we're invading a world at peace rather than trying to stop something that has gone awry with Richard and Lambda. So yeah, for there to be just this one enemy type, almost like a guardian of the area, I think makes it all the more arresting in its representation.
Stand strong.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to see it. Debilitate hold. Yeah, for sure. Which almost, not almost, which does reinforce the point that Fodra's core is trying to make, right? This idea that the man-made thing engineered to extract Elith from the world is grotesque and does violence to the universe, whereas the natural corollary of it in Fodra, where all life stems from, is beautiful and harmonious in comparison. Alright, I am gonna go back to that shortcut because Sharia is just not pulling her weight. Oh, they can cast too? That sucks.
I failed everyone.
Give name to the glimmer that burns eternal, never to be doused, and instill it with hope. Resurrection.
Sorry about that. Strike! There!
Lay waste to our foe. Strands of truth. Give name to the glimmer that burns eternal, never to be doused, and instill it with hope.
Sorry about that.
Sword assault.
Very tough is what it was. Oh, how are we doing on Asbel's title? I'm sure you probably would have told me, Grail. Oh, no, we have it. Okay, so now when it's above a 25 hit combo, we can use his Mystic Art. Is that the game? I forget where that title was, but if we moved off of it, we certainly... Yeah, we have it now. Perfect. So where's the one with the new art? Diabolic Rage. We can go back to that. But only once per battle. Yes. Good to remind me of that. Thank you. Cat's clothes! Ah, worth the trip. Worth fighting all of those Eldritch Guardians. Clothes copying Cat's costumes. Not an official product. This is a replica made using Fomicry? Wait. Oh no, not when there are 5 minutes left in the stream. You're not going to melt my Tails brain when there are 5 minutes left in the stream telling me that Fomicry has somehow found its way into this world. Oh, you guys. What is Act 4 doing to me? Jade! Show yourself! Speaking of the Calyx. That's what happened. Oh! Oh, I hate that I had that thought, because remember, it was Jade and Sophie who found themselves at the bottom of the Calyx, so, oh my god. Maybe that asshole Jade did find a way to use the power from the Age of the Gods in the Desolation to travel back with Sophie to her world and introduce them to Fomicry. Oh. I'm glad that thought melted my brain. That was a fun note to end the stream on. There we go. Alright, I'll have to look at that funny way of dealing with them after I'm done suffering at their hands. God, that grab. I keep forgetting we now have more latitude to use Asbel's Mystic Art once a battle. I'll have to try that next time if I remember. Well, I like that they're not insurmountable and it's not like they're eating our items.
Everyone,
He said, daring them to give him a much harder time this time
stay on
around.
your game. Let destruction reign. This task we can never postpone.
Come, rusted blades. Draw out the pain.
I certainly understand that, Grail. It takes time. It's a process. For what it's worth, I've been delighted with the many sides of you have shared with the public, not least of which you're writing. So I'm proud and honored with what you've shared. You know, it's a curve to becoming comfortable with it. There we go. He did it. That is a cool way to boost the damage. Doesn't end the battle, but just makes Asbel that much more useful. Well, let's see if we can find the chest that I assume is mirroring the other one on the left side of this area, and then see if we can find a place to save and wrap things up, and then we'll have I think just a final drive to the end, and then the post-gaming Wednesday. Is that his throne room that he's in during that Mystic art? It looks a little like that, but I don't have the window or throne room vividly up in my head. Yeah, big, slow, pretty easy to manage. If I were a little more technically able, I'm sure they'd be very easy to manage and juggle. I like how a lot of times one of them is weak to assault arts and one of them is weak to burst arts to, you know, exercise both parts of the combat system and both sides of your brain, so to speak. There we go. Keel, my boy, the most widely recognized Tales character in Japan somehow. What kind of technology does Celestia possess? It's a good one. That's one of his earliest ones. Kingdom Hearts is oh. I believe that's how that quote goes. Alright, let's see if I can open that clip real quick. Oh, the Legion of Huberts. I immediately understand why you appreciate those titles so much, Grail. Just so you can meme on the game indefinitely. Alright, well, that was a good moment to wrap up with getting Keels, I think. Because otherwise, I know Aaron, and I know final areas of final dungeons, and if we go deeper into it, talk about literal and figurative gravity, I'll just be pulled in all the way to the end of this, and we'll be here for at least another hour between wrapping things up and talking about it. So much the better to tag up, and then we can do it on Wednesday. Which, I'm telling you, man, that's part of why I feel so... I so deeply feel like I'm missing out by not having access to all the characters, because I really like feeling like I know the characters in the games well enough to have a sense of what they say, even if it's not their most memorable lines, and being totally in the dark about so many of the non-localized characters just gives me the exact opposite of those feelings. I feel gross and unworthy. All right. How about that? We used an official complete strategy guide from Bamco to break through the barrier of the labyrinth. We got a little more insight into what it is that Fodra's core is up to and why. We had a bunch more character development and reflection and resolutions in those conversations between the gang as they were working their way down. Didn't get all the way through, but I would say that was pretty well balanced and progressive for a Monday stream. We definitely made a lot of headway and found a lot of stuff as we worked through. Definitely. Well, you know, it's a good Monday vibe, Grail, because I think we're at a sweet spot in the fourth act where we had a lot to process in everything that was working up to the shaft from last week. And so we took the weekend, we sat with it, and now, you know, especially with challenging, non-linear, suffering-oriented final dungeons like we were talking about today, I think that's a great context in which to work out and sort through a lot of the stuff that had been bubbling up for a while. And again, I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. Sure sign of not only a great JRPG, but also an amazing supplemental fourth act to a JRPG, that things can come together so cleanly that it invites all of these really compelling and textually grounded conversations as we're speculating about, you know, what this means for Asbel as he goes forward and makes this decision, what it means for Sophie as she comes to understand her origins more, how Fodra's plan relates to Asbel and Lambda. Like, it's a testament to the game, I would say, just as much as all the wonderful friends and thinkers in the chat that were able to have such clear points of discussion and debate about every aspect of this 90-hour journey as things are coming to a head in this piece of supplemental content. How about that, right? Maybe the only force of nature villain in the series that isn't just instantly signaled out as being pure evil. Yeah, I mean, I think you know at this point, Grail, that I have thoughts on Tales of Eternia, so we'll talk about that particular example that you mentioned when the time comes. Yeah, it's interesting because there certainly are forces of nature in the series that are not immediately singled out as evil, like Lorelei, right? But this is definitely interesting that almost because like the party arrives at the identity of the sentience by working through and understanding what's happening with monsters without just like discovering the sentience itself in some antagonistic context. There's more space for them, I think, to work through and understand what it is and what it wants. Also, again, like a nice thing to keep in mind that this is the fourth act. These characters have had their arcs, they've done a lot of development, they're pretty open-minded as far as JRPG characters go because of everything that happened with Lambda and Richard and themselves in the first three acts. So they're also in a uniquely good position to not jump to conclusions about the sentience of Fodra, which I think is a big part of what lends credibility to Asbel and everyone else saying what we need to do is show the planet that people can change, because in fact they did change over the first three acts of the game, right? So very cool to see the way that is imbued in the structure, and it has me more excited than ever to see what happens at the culmination of everything. Yeah, Rena definitely comes to mind. I was thinking about that too, Pottery, because I think, to Grail's point, and I would need to go back and look at Tales of Arise, I think when they first get a sense of what the Great Astral Spirit is, the party's impulse, because all of Rena derives from it, is to antagonize it, and it's really like, it's that great spirit of Rinwell being in touch with all of the different astral energy of the world and being able to commune with the great astral spirits that pulls them back from it and suggests, no, this thing it's not evil, it's not trying to kill us, it's trying to fix the universe, and we should think about whether there's a way for us to help it, right? That's how I read it, at least. Grail, you might have meant something else, but yeah, I think in terms of the details of how it's borne out, we're on the same page. All right, friendos. Well, we were still a little late, but pretty timely, in and out on a Monday evening. I am so excited, as always, but especially for this week with you, because I think there's no doubt we're at least going to wrap up the main story of Tales of Grace's F after almost 100 hours. Whether or not we'll make it all the way through the post-game is another story, but we'll have plenty to talk about and think about, and through which to contextualize our last few months together. Also, a whole new analysis exploring a range of other masterpieces in the series, the Azalea titles, so hopeful that'll work its way into the discussion as well, and we'll be able to start gearing up and getting excited about the next motions in the series between Tales of Exilia and whatever written analysis I turn my attention to next. So it's going to be a good week. Don't miss it. I'm excited. I hope you are too. I'm sure we'll work in plenty more conversations of every game except the one we're playing too, whether it's Inscription, which I'm sure I'll make more progress on, Pottery, or any of the other Tales games from Vesperia to Eternia to the many others that have even worked their way into the conversation this evening. Yes, Hump Day should be fun. I say that. But here's the thing. The article is actually going up tomorrow, hell or high water, and that's been the roadblock. So I know you'll believe it when you see it, but I'll be losing my mind, I'm sure, in more ways than one as soon as I'm back at Inscription, so I won't be able to hold back from telling you. It'll be no one's secret. Yeah, right. I guess that is the one variable. Like, will hearts consume me as opposed to Inscription? But it's all good for the study of games. It's all good for Tales of Praxis. It's a good week to be a Praxis gamer. A good year for it. Cheers to that. All right, no better note than that on which to end. Grail, Pottery, my friends, my thinkers, gamers, always a pleasure. So nice chatting with you. Dear Raider, whose name I forget, who dropped in at the beginning. I'm sorry you dropped into something different than what you were expecting, but we really do something different and special and thoughtful here on Tales of Praxis. So I hope you come back. If you love these games, you have a seat at the table for what it is that we do. Until Wednesday, my friends, it'll be the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully wrapping up the main story here. Hopefully having lots of other stuff to talk about. I hope you think well. I hope you game well. Hope you have a great start to your week, whether it's continuing great vibes on Monday or turning things around. Be thinking of you and wishing you well. All right, gamers. Next time, let's see where Asbel and Ko's adventures take them. Till then, cheers.